Abraham there is burnt offering on a mountain, I will point out to you. Rising early the next morning, Abraham saddled a donkey and took along 2 workers and his son Isaac. Abraham chopped wood for the burnt offering and started on the journey to the place God showed them. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. Then Abraham said to the workers, "Stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go over there, and we will worship and come back to you." Abraham took wood for the burnt offering and gave it to Isaac to carry. In his own hands he carried the fire and the knife, and the 2 of them went on alone. Isaac said, "Father." "Here I am, my child," Abraham replied. "Here are the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "My child, God will provide the lamb for the burnt offering." Then the 2 of them went on together. When they arrived at the place God had pointed out, Abraham built an altar there and arranged wood on it. Then he tied up his son Isaac and put him on the altar on top of the wood. Abraham stretched out his hand and seized the knife to kill the child. But the angel of God called to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. "Do not raise your hand against the boy," the angel said. "Do not do the least thing to him. I know now how deeply you revere God, since you did not refuse me, your son, your only child." Then, looking up, Abraham saw a ram caught by its horns in a bush. He went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his child. Abraham called the place, "God provides." And so it is said to this day, on this mountain, Yahweh provides. The angel of God called Abraham a second time from heaven and said, "I swear by myself, it is Yahweh who speaks. Because you have done this, because you have not refused me your son, your only child, I will shower blessings on you. I will make your descendants as many as the stars of heaven and the grains of sand on the seashore. Your descendants will possess the gates of their enemies, and in your descendants all nations of the earth will find blessings. All this because you obeyed my command."
Would you pray with me? Sacred presence. This is our one. So help us in our understanding, in our examination, in our reflection, in our conversation. May the words of my mouth, the meditations of each of our hearts be filled with your wisdom and your insight. Amen. So, we've had 5 weeks of Old Testament stories. And it finally happened. I can't believe it took this long for it to happen. That I came upon a story where I went, "Oh, heck no, I don't want to preach on this." After about 2 days of study, I thought, there is nothing here. There's nothing here to preach on. I got nothing. I should just give up now. Cut my losses. Switch the topic. Because, I mean, seriously, we've got child sacrifice. We've got the father who just blindly obeys. you'll note that like nobody asked Sarah her opinion, right? Am I missing anything? Is there anything good here? No, there is nothing good here. So I reminded myself that this whole series was about going deeper. It's about going in depth into the Old Testament story. So I took a deep breath about Wednesday. And I took a step back and dug deeper. So we're taking a little step back before we go forward. The book of Genesis is like a patchwork quilt where all kinds of people wrote stories and had contributions that at one point in time, one person decided to compile into a complete whole, stitch it together piece by piece with sort of a loose framework that holds it all together. Who's to say how many hands touched that quilt? How many different scribes, how many different authors, how many different rabbis had a hand in embellishing the stories, or removing pieces, or massaging them together a little bit more? We don't know. And we also have to understand that the Near Eastern culture of the time had its own part of the quilt, because the culture of the secular culture of the day informed thinking and theology and traditions. For example, child sacrifice. It's what they did back then, along with animal sacrifice, right? Now some scholars have said that maybe this story was to stand as a critical turning away from child sacrifice. But the reality is that using this story would not have seemed odd to anyone back then, because it was normal. Not saying it's good, not saying it's right. I'm saying it was normal for the people back then to use this as an example in a story. Remember that Genesis was not written as a history book. Right? It was compiled by people in the tribe of Israel, for people in the tribe of Israel, to try and convey their understandings of God for reflection and for teaching and for debate and conversation and for preaching. As such, it makes sense that they would take the problems and the possibilities of their audience and use them in their stories. Right? So, in order for us, let me say, I am 99.999% sure this did not happen. Which raises the question of why this story was used in the first place. Who were they trying to reach? What was the message they were trying to convey? The purpose of the story. To get to that, we have to understand that it was compiled during the time, I think I've said this before, during the time of the exile, when the Israelites were, at least the cream of the crop, were in exile in Babylon. So to know why this story might appeal to them, we need to put ourselves in the shoes of the Israelites in exile. So everybody pretend with me for a minute that we're in the, like the end of the 6th century. I can never do centuries. So like 590-ish BCE, before the Common Era. Really, really long time ago, right? And you were the cream, well, you still are, the cream of the crop in Jerusalem. You were the wealthy. You were the skilled artisans. You were the doctors and the lawyers and the scribes and the rabbis and the ones who could read and do numbers. And as such, when King Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians came in to take over your town, they said, don't kill the cream of the crop, we'll take them, because they can help our civilization. So you all lost your homes, lost your jobs, maybe lost some of your family in the war, certainly lost all of the poor, if you knew any of them, if you probably never know. But anyways, a lot of people died or got left behind. Your temple got destroyed, and you were taken away into a country you've never been to. And you saw no end to your exile. So the exile lasted probably 50 to 70 years. Chance of you actually getting out of it might have been slim to none at that point. There were 3 waves of deportees from Jerusalem to Babylon. Tough times. So, tell me how you're feeling. Unhappy. That might be the understatement of the year. How are you feeling as an exile in Babylon?
Despair.
Despair, lost. Defeated. Scared, persecuted.
Like the people you looked down on your whole life.
Like the people you looked down on your whole life. Now tables are flipped. Used.
What now?
What now? Enslaved. Yeah, grieving. So what questions do you have for God? Why?
Why have you forsaken me?
Why have you forsaken us? What did we do wrong? What do you have planned for us? Any other questions, Jared?
Anger at God.
Anger at God. And what do you want to ask God, Jared?
Well, I'm starting to lose my faith.
You're starting to lose your faith. Yeah?
I'm starting to wonder if he's there.
Where the heck are you, God? Clarice?
And you're feeling desperate. I mean, that if you still believe in God, you're going to do anything that you can to get out of this situation. And you're
Right.
wondering, what can I do?
What can I do to make you fix this, God? Because that's how it worked at the time, right? I know that none of you asked, why are you testing me? Why me? Why us? Right? Again, what did we do? Why are you testing us? Because remember, in those times, whatever happened was God who made it happen. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And testing was a thing. Just like child sacrifice was a normal thing, being tested by God was a normal thing. If you read the Old Testament, over and over again, God's testing people's hearts and minds. Which brings us to our story of Abraham and Isaac. Because why does God, your first question, why does God tell Abraham to sacrifice his son? Because he's testing Abraham. Obedience. Are you as faithful as you're supposed to be? Right?
So wasn't their child like they're in their 80s or 90s, right? Sarah Abraham, isn't that?
Abraham's like 120 about now, right? But he lived to be much, much older than that. Numbers were were a little fishy back then and just meant to say he lived a really long time. So for me, the concept of testing becomes the linchpin sort of in this passage. Now, let me be very clear. I do not believe that God tests our faith. Y'all got that? Do not believe that God tests our faith. And while I'd like to say that was an ancient concept, over the years of being a pastor, I have had many people say to me, God must be testing me. And they weren't all joking. Why is God testing me? I do not, going to repeat it again, do not believe that God tests our faith. Does life test our faith?
Yeah.
Absolutely. We experience suffering, we experience loss, we experience struggles that test our faith. But I do not, and I cannot believe in a God who pushes buttons and says, you know, we're going to cause this bad thing to happen because I want to make sure that Sue is really as faithful as she says she is. What kind of capricious, sadistic God does that? But again, back in the day, that's how they understood God. So, part of me thinks that the God that Abraham knew and understood must have been a little insecure in order to demand this test of faithfulness again. Because if you follow Abraham's life, which we've done for the last 5 weeks, has Abraham been anything but faithful? No, over and over again. He leaves his homeland when God says leave and go somewhere that I'm not going to tell you. He gets circumcised and has everybody in his tribe circumcised. He has, finally his legitimate heir at the age of 100. Every time God says Abraham says, here I am. And when God says, Abraham, I want you to take your only legitimate son, on whom the promise rests, by the way, for you to have all those descendants that are going to number a sister, but I want you to take that one. And I want you to take him up into the mountains, and I'll find you a place where you should strap him down and kill him, and then offer him as a burnt offering. And Abraham says, okay, God. Now, in our day and age, if anybody tells you, or if you hear voices that say, cut off a piece of your body, or take your child and sacrifice them on the mountain, I want you all to check yourselves into a mental health hospital immediately. But back then, this is how God worked. And I'm a little disappointed in Abraham. Because if you'll remember the little conversation with Yahweh right before Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham's challenging God about killing the innocent. Oh God, if there are 50 innocent in Sodom and Gomorrah, you're not going to wipe everybody out, are you? No, I wouldn't do that. 40, 30, 10? No, we won't kill all the innocent people with all the guilty. And now take your son and sacrifice him. And Abraham says nothing. What happened to my questioning Abraham? There's this blind faith going on. Now, having said all this, if you're a person in exile and you're hearing this story about Abraham having to do the hardest thing ever, and Abraham has faith, and Isaac is saved, and God is faithful, and the promise is kept, maybe you're feeling some comfort in that. Because you're going through something really, really hard, and you're doing your darndest to be as faithful as you possibly can, and so maybe there's going to be a way out eventually. that God will keep God's promise. I'm not entirely sure this story was about Abraham. I'm not entirely sure it wasn't about God being faithful at the end of the day. That God will actually keep the promise to not let the descendants be destroyed and annihilated. Because that's what it feels like when you're alone in exile. Is our tribe going to finally now be annihilated, and the promise of descendants as numerous as the stars is gone? Will God be faithful? And I think the answer is that this story says yes. Yes, God will keep the promise. Yes, God will be faithful. So all of this for me raises the question of faith. And what does faith mean? Faith is, honestly, it's one of those religious words that I weirdly don't use very much. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but I rarely talk about my faith. I rarely use faith in the context of Sunday mornings. And I think it's because the word is a little ambiguous. There's a lot of questions that go along with it and a lot of baggage that I think the word carries. Does anybody else feel like that, or is it just me? Yeah. Okay, so what's the ambiguity? What's the question? What's the baggage to that word? Can anybody name it?
You're blind.
Is it a blind faith? Yeah, like Abraham's blind obedience to kill his son. Jerry?
Sometimes it just sounds like a cop-out.
Oh, it can sound like a cop-out.
It's an excuse.
An excuse. You just have to have faith. Like that?
Faith without action.
Faith without action. Devin?
Like there's like an expectation that you have to live up to be good enough. You have to have enough.
Yes, you have to have enough faith. You need to have the right faith. Clarice?
It feels like a manipulation.
It feels like a manipulation to say you need to have faith. Or what?
It feels like more of what a human is telling me I have to do to live up to their version of a religion.
Okay. That makes sense. Jerry?
And they bring a little guilt with that.
Oh, a little guilt in your
Tighten it
faith.
onto that.
Okay. Yep. Round and then yeah.
Don't question.
Don't question, have faith. Right. Yeah.
To me, this reeks of the prosperity gospel. That why should you have faith? Because then you will be rewarded, whether it's riches here on earth or whether it's the survival of your tribe.
Sure, there's a lot of prosperity gospel out there that says if you have enough faith, if you believe the right way, and give enough money to your TV evangelist, then you will be blessed with all of these riches. Did we hit all of them, Johnny? Because you guys were nodding a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Mike?
I was to say, like modern day, or something's not going their way, that usually somebody will respond. We'll just have a little more faith.
You just have to have a little more faith.
Yeah,
Right.
it'll be fine.
Right. And so again, sort of the cop-out kind of, Don? Control. That faith can be about control. Trying to control others. I assume. Obligation. Complication in what way? Obligation. You're obliged
Obligated to have faith.
to have faith. Yes. Yes. And my question always becomes, what exactly am I supposed to have faith in? Which God is it that you want me to have faith in? And if I say I have faith, do I sound like a religious nut job? So I challenged myself to look at this for myself. And I wrote out a little something that I'm going to read, but before I get there, let me be clear that what we believe is different than having faith. What we believe, our theology, if you will, can be given to us by someone else. And for me, that's an evolving, changing thing. As I grow, as I learn, as I study, as I experience, my theology, what I believe has changed. is much deeper than that. It's not based on those beliefs. It's based on a knowing within me. It's based on it's based on faith. It's this ineffable thing that you can't describe. But I trust that there is something more out there. And there are times when my faith is that trust, that knowing is stronger than other times. There are times when that gets challenged. And at those times, it's really helpful to be here with you. Because while we don't necessarily talk about it, I see that trust, that faith in you, in the way you live your life. The faith with action, Mike, right? The faith with love, the faith with justice, the faith with kindness and being there for one another. None of that has to have anything to do with theology and what you believe. So I wrote out some faith statements that I'd like to share with you. They don't have to be the same as yours, but it's an example of where I am and what I'm thinking today, and the challenge will be for you to consider what your faith is for you. I have faith that an ineffable divine presence is with me at all times, even when I feel completely disconnected from that presence. I have faith that an energy of love permeates all creation, even if it's ignored, and that we are connected by the spiritual web of love and light. My faith does not require or expect God to miraculously fix, save anyone or anything. I understand we humans are responsible for our actions, and I understand our bodies to be mortal. I have faith that even through whatever mess I'm in, there is light to guide my way and strength to help me through. Brene Brown once said, "I thought faith would say, I will take away the pain and the discomfort, but what faith ended up saying is, I will sit with you in it." I have faith that intuition, synchronicities, nudges are subtle ways the divine moves in this world. I have faith that I will say something on Sunday mornings. Hasn't let me down. I need that faith every week. I have faith that no matter how bad the world seems, there will always be those working for good. I have faith that this life is not the end of my spirit, my soul, my essence, though I can't say for sure what comes next. I know that my faith is not lessened by my questions, but that the opposite is true. And I know that if my faith wavers or I mess up, it does not lessen God's love for me. So I invite you to think about what faith is for you. If you can get beyond the baggage and the ambiguities and the feeling that maybe somebody's trying to control you through your faith. What does it mean to have faith in that thing we can't see, yet sustains us? And as for the story of Abraham and Isaac, I still don't like it. But I do think that it had meaning for the people then. And that it continued to be used in the Bible every time people had to do some hard thing and had to try and maintain their faith through it. That they could remember, Abraham did that hard thing and he stayed faithful and God stuck it out and didn't let him down. Whatever hard thing we have to do, we hang tight to that sometimes even weak faith. And I don't think the divine lets us down. Amen.